So we'll call the meeting to order at, now it's 5:35. And sorry, let me get this under. Karen, any adjustments to the agenda?
No, Josh.
Okay. So if there are no, let's see, you have, it's written on here, add planning commission appointments under select board items. We're not going to do that.
I think you're looking at a different agenda.
Yeah, you're looking at a different agenda.
Okay. Oh, sorry. That was the minutes from the previous one.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. So approval of minutes of February 10th, 11th, 15th, 16th, and 19th. If somebody would like to make a motion.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from February 10th, 11th, 15th, 16th, and 19th of 2021.
David, you second? Okay. So it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of February 10th, 11th, 15th, 16th, and 19th. And if there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next, let's do warrants to the treasurer. So we have two warrants tonight. We have an accounts payable and we have a, payroll. Karen, or you, either David or Barry, you want to make a motion? David, you're muted.
I make a motion to approve the AP, the warrants to the treasurer after upon her, what do I say?
Would you like to make a motion to approve and execute the warrants to the treasurer upon completion of review?
So moved.
David, second. All right. So
I can't hear David. Are you
David's still
unmuted?
muted.
Yeah. Huh.
David, I just sent you an unmute request. There you go.
Am I on now?
Yes.
You are.
Hallelujah.
So it's been.
Thank you for making the motion, Vera.
You're welcome.
It's been moved and seconded to approve and execute the warrants. And so why don't we review them and then we will vote on that.
So payroll warrant dated February 26, 2021 in the amount of $23,223.18. There was some overtime for the highway department, and that is why this is high. They had about 19 and a half hours overtime.
And presumably largely due to snow removal.
Yeah, plowing roads, snowstorms, yep.
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to note that probably also why it's so high is because the select board members are going to be paid on this and we get a lot of money. So
That is correct, Sarah. Yeah, your stipends are in here.
Good. Thank you. And just out of actually, I don't have that one in front of me right at the moment because I just switched screens. But presumably that's prorated for Bara and Laura. Is that how that works? Yes. Okay.
Yes, yes.
That earlier. Okay. Thank you. All right. And accounts payable.
So accounts payable dated February 13th through February 26, 2021. This does have the third and final school payment. The total amount is $1,134,225.35. So the school payment was $1,078,863.91 for the public.
and the RC Brayshawn Company, what is that?
That is for printing of the town reports.
Okay.
So 800 plus reports.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
I'm good.
Any further questions on the warrants?
That's
No.
all I have.
Okay, so it was moved and seconded to execute and approve the warrants, and upon completion of review, now we have reviewed them. So if there are no further questions or comments.
There's one more warrant.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
sorry.
Oh, that's right, just for the printing, is that right? Yeah.
So there was a second warrant and it's dated February 11th, 2021 in the amount of $323.34. And that was for the postage because we required a check to mail the town reports. Thank you, Alyssa.
So do we need to
now-
approve that again? Or, oh, we haven't voted yet. Okay.
No, because it was in the packet of warrants, I just forgot
Correct.
there. All right, so now the warrants have been thoroughly reviewed. And so unless there's further questions or comments, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Public comment on items not on the agenda. So I am not able to view my whole screen at any one time in a meeting of this size. So if anybody has a public comment they'd like to make on an item not on the agenda, they can either make their voice heard or enter something. I saw
Hey,
Mike
Josh.
raise his hand. Hi, Mike.
Yeah, good evening, everybody, and I'm glad to see everybody. I just want to quickly thank Bara for stepping up.
Oh, thank you.
I know it can be a relentless job to sit on the select board, and I don't take all of your services for granted at all. So I want to thank you and
Thank you.
show some appreciation.
Thank you.
I certainly second that motion, and
Yes.
I agree thoroughly. Bara has been a great addition for her short tenure on the select board, and it has been much appreciated during a not so simple time. So it's been great. Thank you, Bara.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Vera.
You're welcome.
Any other public comment on items not on the agenda?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
first I should like to second what everyone else said and to personally thank Bara. But I'd like to mention that your presence on the select board, Bara, completely changed the group dynamics of the board. It's not due to any particular person. It's simply that two people on a board have a conversation. Three people on a board have deliberations, which is the purpose of a select board, of course. So thank you for that. And should you ever wish to be on the select board again, you have my vote.
Thank you.
Now, further, if I may, Mr. Chairman, as promised, I have delivered to the Town of Putney Select Board, Town Manager, Town Clerk, and Town Meeting Moderator, clear, simple, tested, one-page instructions for Town of Putney voters joining the 2021 Putney Town Meeting Public Informational Meeting via Zoom and computer, smartphone, tablet, or conventional telephone. Every Town of Putney voter has the right to join and participate in this public informational meeting. Ensuring that they know how now is up to you. Thank you.
I just want to say, Howard, that's invaluable. What you did is invaluable. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Bara. Although I didn't do it for thanks, I did it because it was the right thing to do.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
And we will, so that is, the public informational hearing is actually the first item on our select board items. So when we get there, I will ask Karen to highlight the information she has, and then if there's need to further elaborate on what Mr. Fairman has provided us with, then we might ask him to do that. But all right, any other public comment? Not hearing anything and not seeing anything in the chat. We will move on to select board items for discussion and action. So First item, public informational hearing, notice and agenda announcement. So we are having, as hopefully most of you know, a public informational hearing related to the warnings and articles for town meeting, which there will not be an in-person town meeting, as you know. So this is an opportunity to have some of the conversations that we might sometimes find ourselves having on town meeting, but more importantly, on town meeting day, but more importantly, this is an opportunity for the public to ask questions about the items that will be voted on by Australian ballot. And as most of you should have noticed, you received a ballot via the mail, which was the recommended method from the Secretary of State's office. And thanks to John Johnson and his office for making that happen. But also I want to make sure that people are aware that if they do not mail in their ballot, they can deposit them in the secure ballot box that is located right on the front steps of Town Hall. And I don't know, Karen, that box will last be checked at what time? Do you know?
It'll be checked on March 2nd, you know, the day of voting. So we check it.
Presumably we have to check it until 7 o'clock. So until the polls close.
Correct.
But also for people who do not want to either mail or drop their ballot in that box, they can also go to the fire station.
Correct.
Or in-person voting if they choose. So
They can also drop their ballot off at the fire station on March 2nd as well.
In person, because there will be voter registration tables there. So
right.
Yes, Barra, go ahead.
I just wanted to make a clarification. Meg will make this clear on Saturday, but it's my understanding is it's actually not a time for discussion in the same way that it is time for discussion when we have an in-person meeting, because it can't happen that way. It's really more a time for people to ask questions of the select board. And there's not to, my understanding is there is not to be a back and forth between residents, that is not actually the intention. Meg will explain it better.
I don't know whether Meg is present. You're
She
right.
said she can't be here.
Okay. Sorry. I misspoke. It's an opportunity. It's really an opportunity for people to ask questions about the ballot initiative, the articles that are warned on the ballot. It is a question and answer period. So in that sense, it's a discussion, but it's not, because it's not on the floor, it's not an open discussion. So thank you. That's an important clarification. But we will all be available in order to try to answer as best we can any questions that people have about items that will be that are on the ballot and will be voted on.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
Well, while you are correct that at this meeting, voters may ask questions of our select board and of course our town manager, if the select board feels that the town manager should answer the question. But per the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America, they are entitled to speak for or against the adoption of an article. Now, that is not back and forth between citizens, but and town meeting never is. We each stand up when we receive the floor and are allowed to speak, saying, "I think we should vote for this," or "I think for it or against it." That is guaranteed by the First Amendment.
Yes, no, I absolutely agree with you, and I guess it's sort of semantics, because it tends to, when we do it in person, it tends to feel a little bit more like a discussion, but you are absolutely right that people are definitely welcome to make statements about their opinions about the ballot items. So thank you for clarifying that. Okay, so.
I have a couple of other things on this topic. Are you moving on, or are you just?
Well, I
filling?
was gonna ask Karen to go through some of the logistics of it, but
Great.
Baron, why don't we have
Well,
Karen do that, and then we'll
Yes.
see where we go from there.
Okay, so I just want to let everyone know that you can go to the town website for most of the information for Saturday, February 27th. So if you go to www.putney, V as in Victor, T as in Tom.org, you click on the town clerk page, you will see annual town meeting. You want to click on that. And then you go to annual town meeting information. And on that page, you're going to see the instructions on how to link to Zoom and what numbers you can use. You're going to see the agenda. So the public informational notice and agenda is on there. There is the warning that was signed by the select board on there as well. And contact information too is on the instructions. So if you have technical difficulty, and I would recommend that people get the information for Zoom, at least try to log into it before Saturday morning. If you have a problem, you can call the town hall, John Johnson, at 387-5862, extension 13. He will help you get connected. Alyssa will be there as well, and she will be taking the minutes for the meeting on Saturday. And then Meg Mott will also be at Town Hall. She will be facilitating from my office. Anyone that has questions that want to be asked that you cannot be at the meeting, email them to John Johnson. John will get those questions and hand deliver them right to Meg in the same building. So very important for you to try to log into Zoom, because you don't want to be trying to do that like at 9:45.
I just want to clarify one thing about that too, Karen.
Sure, no,
But I missed it. If you don't have the ability to email a question to John, but you would like it addressed, you should feel free to either call him or drop a handwritten note at Town Hall. We will try to, in the interest of making this available to as many people as possible, if you don't have access to email,
right.
use whatever means you need to get a question to us, and we will try and make it answered.
Now, if John's line is busy, you can always leave a voice message. I don't recommend dropping anything off at Town Hall because the building is pretty much closed to the public. And they're going to try to focus on logistics for this meeting on Saturday. You can drop them in a secure drop box out front, and then we'll be checking that throughout the day too. So however you need to, you can always call us. Now, Alyssa Harlow, her extension is 14. So if you can't get through to John, you can try to get through to Alyssa.
And they're both going to be available during the meeting on Saturday, Karen, is that correct?
That is correct, but I will caution that Alyssa will be assisting me with trying to share documents and the likes. Plus, she's taking minutes, Josh.
Yeah, so she'll be occupied.
She will be preoccupied, but I think the three of them in the same building, it'll work out well. But people need to know that they need to try to get on early.
Karen,
Yes,
I'm gonna hit record, okay?
sure.
Austin just asked me to do it.
This conference will now be recorded.
And
Okay.
we do have a recorded record of it because BCTV has been
Right.
Austin, is that correct? You've presumably been recording?
Yes, I've been recording from the start.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
One other link I want to add. So I did send something off to Putney, as did Mr. Fairman. And I also added the school district a link to their page for all of their information. So in case people have a hard time, but it's just a courtesy for the school district that's all on there, because of course their vote's important as well. So that's about it for the logistics, Josh.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
regarding logistics, excellent job on the logistics regarding people who have internet access. However, people who do not have internet access have the same right to participate in this meeting. So they're not necessarily going to go online to find the information that our town manager has said is posted there. How are they going to obtain this information?
That information was sent to Putney, Mr. Fairman.
But the point that Mr. Fairman is making is that if you don't have internet access, therefore presumably would be unable to find that information via that route.
It's normally available at town hall and town hall is closed, is that right? I mean, how was this done in the past before we had internet?
We didn't have to arrange a meeting of this nature before internet, so it was but typically information is posted at town hall. So Karen, I mean, this meeting has also been warned, and therefore it is posted at town hall, at the post
office. It's on the website, and the information is on the front cover of the town report.
Oh.
So
there, Mr. Fairman, would be probably the
plus a notice went out with all the ballots on, how to.
Mr. Chairman.
To the
yes,
meeting.
Mr. Fairman.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
The reason I wrote the instructions is because the information on the front page of the town report and the information in the instructions for voters assumes that people are familiar with Zoom. Now, I return to my point, which is people who do not have, town of Putney voters who do not have internet access are entitled to know how to participate in this meeting. Now, you folks may say the town hall is closed, but nevertheless, they are entitled to phone the town hall and ask for the information, and you have to come up with some way to get it to them. My suggestion would be open the door and hand it to them, or say, I'm going to set it outside and you can pick it up, something like that. But so far, what you folks are doing is you're talking about people who have internet access are all set to attend this meeting. And unfortunately, everyone has the right to participate in this meeting, which would mean via telephone, whether or not they have internet access, and you have to have a way for them to get this information.
Right.
Can you clarify, Mr. Fairman, what information you're specifically referring to? Because you're not referring to the information about how to access the internet. What information are you specifically referring to? The warrant articles?
The town manager has said that the information about the meeting is posted online, and I said, good work. But everyone is entitled to attend this meeting, whether or not they have online access. There has to be a way for people to get that information who do not have internet access. And obviously it has something to do either with the information, you can call the town hall and arrange to pick it up there, or it's perhaps some of it is made available at various sites around town, as I suggested to you at your most recent meeting. But you do not have the option of making the information available only to people who have internet access.
No,
we understand that. I understand that, Mr. Fairman. What I'm trying to ask is what information are you wanting to make sure they have? The warrant articles?
They need to know the telephone numbers to phone in, that being the
Okay.
toll-free telephone numbers. Remember,
Okay.
this meeting is going to last about 6 hours. And if the phone numbers that were given on the instructions for voters and on the front page of the town meeting are not toll-free numbers. Now, you can imagine the impact that a 6-hour telephone call would have on people's telephone bills. So I found out what the toll-free numbers are. Now, that is one thing they certainly are entitled to know. They're also entitled to know, okay, you phone the number, then what do you do when Zoom answers the phone? Because Zoom's going to ask for some information. It's going to ask for the meeting ID.
So
It's going to ask for the passcode.
I just want to try to make this as concise as possible and speak to your point, because your point is, I completely agree that it's really important. Do you think that it would address your point if we made sure that your instructions were available if somebody called town hall, and so then the town hall handed out your instructions, the warrant articles, and is there some other piece that you would want to make sure they have?
They are entitled to everything that anyone is legally entitled to for this meeting. And let me see, that would include the warning,
Yeah.
which effectively is an agenda. So they certainly are entitled to the warning. They are entitled to whatever they need to know in order to participate in the meeting. If they're not online, then clearly they're going to be participating by telephone. So basically,
So your
they
instructions.
are entitled. They are entitled to the instructions, which I have provided, including the toll-free numbers, so that they can phone in and do what they have to do. But do
you think there's anything else that because what I'm trying to do is prepare the people at town hall so that they have some printouts that they can hand to people. Is there anything else that you think would be needed?
Well, I'm not going to put myself in the position of giving advice to the people who run the town of Putney. You know what you're supposed to do, and I'm simply suggesting that it be done.
Okay, thanks.
This is Ann Carey calling in by phone. I wondered if I could say something.
Yes, go ahead, Ann.
I just want to thank Mr. Furman for what he's just brought up, and I would like to say that I did sit through an hour-and-a-half select board meeting a couple months ago, and I received a $10 long-distance bill after that. It really is significant. And my other suggestion might be whether or not the reformer shouldn't be the only source of this information, but the comments has already gone by the board. But the reformer might be willing to put in a short call town hall for instructions if you're calling in by phone or something like that, or give the phone number. Because some people still do get the reformer.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
I realize I forgot to mention the reformer is working on a story about this.
Okay.
So you may be hearing from them. Susan Small here covers Putney. She's working on it. How do I know? Because she contacted me.
Okay, good. Thank you. Well, I think we all agree, we all are trying to do our best in an unusual year to make this information as available as possible. So yeah, contact Town Hall if you have any questions or concerns, and we will also try, I will reach out to Karen tomorrow, and maybe I can invite Bara and David to do the same if they have, maybe we can try and get some copies of your information spread around a little bit more, and we'll do our best.
So Josh, I have a couple of other things about this issue. Is there? Yeah. I can't see everybody. Is there anybody else who wants to go first?
That's okay. Go ahead, Bara.
Okay, so Karen, you may have already figured this stuff out with Meg, but she emailed us just to try to she gave us a playbook for a remote public hearing, and there were a couple of outstanding questions that it feels like we need to, since we're not going to be able to talk as a board other than here, that we need to make sure are answered. One was something I think, Karen, you can just respond, by what time and what day must voters get their ballots to town hall drop box? And I think we figured out it was by the 2nd at 7 p.m., right?
Yes, but just know that after 4 p.m. on Tuesday, there won't be anybody at the office. So March 2nd, if you have a ballot,
Oh,
drop it off at the fire station,
okay.
okay?
And then another thing she mentioned is she had suggested to Josh that the articles be divided amongst us in advance, and she wondered if that worked. I don't feel the need to do that, but Josh, have you responded or?
I have not responded to that. I mean, typically, we're going to be in person in the library that morning. I mean, typically, we just do that right then, but we can, I'll ponder that one, and I will let Karen know what we think might make.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine to, I think all three of us feel like we can respond as needed and we don't need to necessarily divide it up, but I'll leave that up to you.
Well, what is in that case, Barrett, is it, oh, well, this won't be, yeah, this won't be. Typically, yeah. Typically, we would move articles, but we won't be moving articles at this
Right.
meeting. Because it's not a meeting in which we'll be having votes. So, yeah, that divvying up is different. So, yeah, we'll have to, I'll give that one some more consideration.
Okay, and then the only other thing that I was a flag for me is that she brought up that for Article 12 and 13, she says, I will explain that these are binding resolutions because they have been warned and they have the force of law. And that's contradicting what the lawyer said. So that wording, I don't know if you want to talk with Meg about that, Karen, or if you already have, but just wanted to raise that question.
I'll talk to Meg with John Johnson because he is the town clerk and elections is his forte. So,
And Larry has that letter that you can share with her so that she can understand where he's coming from.
correct.
That's all I have.
So in your packet, Josh, I don't know if you saw it, but there's a remote public meeting script for opening a meeting. You know, it's a template from Vermont League of Cities and Towns.
Yeah.
Very short, but also in there is the Wyndham Southeast School District ballot questions.
Yes.
So it's a 2-page brochure that I shared with you just in case when those articles come up.
And we are going to have a representative from the school there to answer questions about those articles, correct?
No, I've been told that no representative will be answering questions, but I know Ruby McAdoo will be there. Ann Beekman was going to be there. And so I'm not really sure how those two articles are going to be approached.
Yeah, because I am definitely not equipped to address those two articles. So those are on our ballot because they were brought before the town. I can address the sort of technical aspect of what they mean, but beyond that, I can't address any of the information. I mean, Article, in this brochure that you provided, I can explain what happens if a town votes yes on this and no on that or so on, but I can't discuss any of I'm not equipped to address any of the questions that might come up related to, for example, the finances budget related to how that. But there was a public meeting last night. I think it was last night, and I don't know whether they're having another one, but.
Oh, Josh?
Yes.
Ann Beekman wrote a letter, an email, and I'm just going to read this one sentence because I think this helps clarify. I have been in touch with Meg clarifying how to handle this discussion section of the informational meeting. I think we have a plan, but it remains open to discussion. So it sounds like Meg might have more information than we have.
Okay, sounds good. So, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not informed enough to answer questions related to anything other than sort of the structural aspects of voting yes or voting no. So,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
I've been thinking about something that you folks talked about earlier, which was the question of the drop box outside town hall on voting day.
Yes.
And I'm thinking that you may wish to obtain some legal advice or some advice from the Office of the Secretary of State Elections Division on this, because the drop box is not a polling place.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether it qualifies as an official ballot box. I'm not going to comment one way or the other. I'm simply raising the question. And but if people are allowed to deposit ballots there, I suspect that that legally they must be picked up at 7 p.m. when the polls close. But once again, I'm simply speculating, and I'm suggesting you need advice on this, official advice on this, because it is a potential problem.
Yes, I hear you. That's a good point. John, I will ask Karen to talk with John Johnson about that issue, and you may be right. We may in fact have to put a notification on the box that ballots need to be taken at the firehouse. I saw Mike Merwicki raise his hand. Mike, do you have anything further to say about that?
This is something that's been in our committee. Chris Winters from the Secretary of State's office came in looking for money to give to towns to buy more drop boxes because they see them as legal repositories for votes. So they are encouraging towns. They were used extensively in this last election to much success, even more so in some towns than the mail-in ballots. And
But even on the day of the voting, or just up to, because I think that it's the same as if you drop it off at town, right? But on the day of voting, in the past, have they been able to drop off ballots at town, or they have to go to the voting place, is what I understand.
You can do both.
Okay.
You can do both, but after 4 o'clock, nobody will be
Okay.
there. Usually what happens, John will put a sign on the box.
Right.
That you have to go to the fire station, and Kim, his assistant, will go check the box before they, start counting. But honestly, it's no different than if it's stuck in our mailbox at the post office.
But
At least we check ours. That box is checked at least twice a day during the week. And then if John swings through on the weekend, he checks it on the weekend too, because we know how many are coming in. So they're not just sitting out there, but come March 2nd, if you still have your ballot in your hand, it's safer to bring it right to the fire station. And if you don't want to do that because of COVID, the box is there. And we do have security cameras out front now at Town Hall, so that can be monitored remotely. So.
But to Mr. Fairman's point, we should confirm. I'm sure John has researched this, or if he hasn't, I'm sure he will. But we need to confirm whether it's a legitimate place from the Secretary of State's perspective to drop ballots until 7 p.m. So we'll confirm that and post it on the box, presumably.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, because I have to seriously question our town manager's statement that the town hall closes at 4 and therefore that's it for the ballots. Because if people know that they can put their ballots in the drop box, they will, in good faith, put their ballots in the drop box, and as such, they are entitled that their ballots be collected and counted, just as if they had deposited them at town hall.
Yeah.
So I would strongly suggest that you receive advice from the Office of the Vermont Secretary of State Elections Division, so that you do it exactly right, because you are required to.
Yes. Yep. We will do that.
It'll be covered, Mr. Fairman.
All right. Anything else about the public informational hearing notice and agenda announcement?
I just want to say that this has been a crazy year with COVID and how everything has changed and we've all had to adapt. But in this may be an opportunity for greater voter participation And I encourage everybody who can to, ask whatever questions they have during the informational meeting and to vote. The bigger turnout, the better, always in any democracy. So please show up in both ways.
All right. So next item on our agenda is the municipal property tax rate for fiscal year 2022.
So in your packet, I did prepare the spreadsheet, and we already talked about last month before the budget was approved that it looked like it was going to be a 0.02 cent increase, and that is because of the general fund. I tried to level fund it and I couldn't. In your packet also is the school rate for FY22. And so that's at 1.761, which is lower than the first rate that we had seen. So that is really good news right there. And last year's rate for the school was 1.756. So given that we still don't have our fourth tax rate yet, and we won't have that until the grand list is lodged, but that number can come down a little bit, but I don't see where it's going to change much. So we're still looking at the 2 cent increase.
Okay, and we're not attempting to approve this tonight because we don't have that fourth rate.
No,
correct?
This is
So
just for your information.
All right. Any questions related to that? Okay, thank you, Karen. So next would be delinquent property tax update and tax sale procedure.
So in your packet, I shared with you, because we have already collected and closed the tax year for the third payment. The total delinquent tax for the town of Putney is $243,068.76. Of that, $2,002. No, 2,002.
202,000.
No, I can't. 202,999.80 is from 2020.
Wow.
So that's a sizable chunk for this past tax period. So we'll see what we can do. I did run a list for 2 years in arrears, and there's approximately $80,000 for properties that are now 2 years in arrears. So letters will be going out to all the property owners to see what we can do to try to collect some of this money. But and I understand, we all understand it's been a tough year. People have been either working from home or not working at all. So we'll have to see what we can do. Water and sewer too, I gave you an aged receivables report, and there's $17,716.15 that's outstanding. And again, there's approximately 6 properties that are in arrears that, along with their property taxes.
I just want to encourage anybody who might be in circumstances in which they are delinquent and are trying to figure out how to get ahead of that. Karen and her office can help you figure that out. And we would, good faith payments on an outstanding bill go a long way towards helping keep your account in good stead. So I would encourage anybody who is in that situation, please contact Karen and we can try and work with you to figure out a plan to keep things so that it doesn't push it to a point where anybody is forced into a tax sale, because we would of course rather not see any tax sales. Occasionally evident they do occur, and hopefully we can avoid as much of that as possible. And as we have heard and said, it's been a tough year. So please, if we can help you in any way, let us know how to figure that out with you. All right.
Karen has
Josh,
a question.
I just have a quick question. I know we've asked you this, Karen, but Karen and Alyssa, now that you have the final payment and you know where we are, how does the delinquent number of taxes compare to previous years? It seems like it's been not that off compared to previous years up until now.
Yeah, it's probably about 100,000 is
More
it's
than
been
normal.
less. It's been less. So,
Okay.
but I'm not discouraged about it, because I think what'll happen is we will see the payments once we start talking to people. So that'll come down, and probably by June we'll see, I'm hoping it'll be cut in half, that one number, but the rest is, property that's, not in probate, or, it's, or a mobile home here and there. And, they're problem properties, and they have been for a few years now. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It'll come down, but I just don't know how quick it'll come down because of COVID. And that was part of our discussion too, with revenue. We probably wouldn't feel it until 22. So.
Mike, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know there's been a lot of discussion about whether any federal funding will be coming down through for municipalities for issues not dissimilar to this. Do you have any sense of, at the state level, what that might look like, or no idea?
Right now, the treasurer has set up, I think, a fund where if towns have to borrow money because they have a lot of arrears, the state will cover the interest under the assumption that eventually they will get paid back the principal. But in terms of, I think what you're talking about is direct payments for arrears.
I'm not sure what I'm talking about. I just know there's discussion about how federal money might become available to municipalities that are seeing losses related to COVID.
It's something I could certainly look into, because we have created a fund to help pay arrears for rent and mortgages. So if the idea is to keep people in housing.
Yes.
But once they're out, then it becomes a whole nother complicated piece to get them back in. So certainly be glad to look into that.
Yeah,
but I don't know of anything right now.
And I would think that, I mean, you sort of alluded to this, but I would think a potentially helpful way to at least do something would be to offset that interest and penalty, because, and we I guess we'll have to talk about this more on our level now that we're seeing how our numbers are affected. But, not wanting to push people any further into debt than they already are, we certainly would like to have help with that if that's possible. So yeah, I think we both are thinking the same way. Thank you. All right. Anything else about delinquent property tax update and tax sale procedure? I see there is, looks to me like there's something in the chat, but I don't seem to be able to access it.
I can look at it. It's from Mike Maricki. He was saying original estimate. I think he's talking about the school increase. Original
Right.
estimate was was a 9-cent increase. Revenues have come in better than anticipated, hence the increase is only 2 cents.
Thanks, Mike. All right, so next on our agenda is working towards equity and inclusion. And Barra is going to read a statement about this that we, the Select Board, have worked on. This is a complicated issue. We have been working very hard to try and figure out the best way to keep doing this work as effectively and readily as we are able to benefit all the people of Putney. And we are in a moment when there are expired terms for some people who have been on the committee, and we're working through it. We've had a lot of executive sessions lately, and I just want to let people know, because an email came in to this effect. Some of those executive sessions have been related to this topic and others have not. So we have not been exclusively going into executive session to talk about this issue. We have had some that have been related to this and some that have been related to a potential contract dispute, some potential employee issues, some other things. So, we haven't been flat out on this all the time, but we have spent a significant portion of time. So I'm going to ask Barra to go ahead and read a statement that we've been working on, and then we'll see where we go from there.
Karen, I've just been hearing some background noise. Are you able to mute other people?
I've muted everyone except for the board.
Okay. So this is the statement. All employees and elected officials who work for or serve the town of Putney have completed preliminary training related to social bias. That training was important and meaningful for all and gives us insight into the further work that we need to do. Seeing as how many of the original appointments to the Equity and Inclusion Committee have expired, and we are soon to welcome a new member to our Select Board, we want to take some time to think about the most effective way for this committee to continue its important work. We would like to remind people that this committee was meant to be strictly an advisory committee to the Select Board. The Select Board's objectives was not to have committee members doing active outreach in the community, nor was this committee meant to create town policy. The pertinent passage in the founding resolution for the committee states, quote, "The purpose of the Equity and Inclusion Committee is to identify and advise the Select Board on addressing inequities and encouraging inclusive practices in town services, programs, human resources practices, and decision-making processes," unquote. However, it has been brought to our attention that one or more members of the original Equity and Inclusion Committee have personally contacted several town residents whom they feel are exhibiting racist behaviors, with the goal of trying to change those behaviors. It appears that some people may have been contacted simply because of their political affiliation or their perceived beliefs, and for no other reason. No member of the Select Board appointed Equity and Inclusion Committee has the authority to take these types of actions, and the town's lawyer has made it clear that this activity needs to stop immediately. The consultants we hired to conduct our social bias training also inquired about having the committee advise the Select Board on town policies, procedures, and practices. The consultants recommended that the Select Board think about who we have review town practices, and they indicated that it would be most helpful for us to speak with professionals who have had training and experience in looking at these types of issues in the workplace, in schools, or in municipalities. There are also concerns about the limited presence of people of color on the committee. This needs to be examined at a deeper level to understand why this is the case. After a lot of work and many long discussions, the Select Board has decided to reorganize the structure of the committee. We are going to seek guidance from others in the region who are working toward equity and inclusion in their towns or institutions. And within the first several weeks of the election of a new Select Board member, the Select Board will update the public on progress toward issuing a clear and concise charge for the committee. At that time, we will consider new letters of interest from individuals who would like to be appointed to continue the town's work on equity and inclusion. We, the Select Select Board want this work to continue readily and to be focused on best serving all of the people of Putney. Lastly, we would like to point out that if the original members of the Equity and Inclusion Committee wish to establish a private group and continue working toward their goals, that is, of course, their right. And I just wanted to point out that that's the end of that statement. I wanted to just also add that we have been in conversation for quite a while and have included Karen, and she's taken an active part in that and has provided us with valuable information. I'm exhausted by being on the Select Board. The intense discussions about how to have town government during COVID, how to have a town meeting, create a budget that doesn't burden residents unnecessarily, and address issues of social justice, equity, and inclusion, which I care deeply about. So I am no longer on the board as of town meeting. I am going to take a week to rest. And then I have volunteered to continue the research that was done originally when the group was formed, to contact professionals and other groups, as I mentioned, in the area who are doing this work and get a sense of what has worked for them, what hasn't. And one thing that is, I want to just point out that Keene, the town of Keene, created a committee called the Racial Justice and Community Safety Committee, and they had a very clear charge to develop recommendations to prevent or correct systemic and cultural inequities in Keene. And Dottie Morris is one of our social bias training consultants, was on that committee, and she's here. I don't know if she wants to speak more about that, but that kind of very clear and concise charge is what the Select Board is trying to figure out.
So, if people have questions, I guess, did we figure out a way, Karen, to have that a print version of that statement posted on the website sooner rather than on our town website?
I can send it to you, Karen, because there have been a couple of edits.
Right. If you send it to me, I can copy it and get it up there right now. I can put it in the chat too, maybe. Maybe you can do that, Bara.
That was a lot of information.
I'll put it on.
Digest.
I'd rather not do it now because I'd rather actually be present for anything that happens now. I'm happy to do it when we're done with this.
Send it to me, Bara, and I'll put it up on the website. Or send it to Alyssa and she can copy it and put it up on the website.
So I think the most important thing I want to emphasize is that the Select Board is definitely not looking to stop working on this issue and to stop having a committee to work on this issue. What we are trying to do is to make clear how the Select Board can be informed about the best ways to do this at a municipal level. As was sort of the original intent of the resolution to create this committee, it was to work to explore those inequities and figure out, be advised on how to best address them. And that really is our ongoing interest. And I just want to be absolutely clear that we are absolutely committed to continuing to do that and wanting to do that both to keep the work moving and doing the work that needs to be done, and really focusing on all the people who live in the town of Putney and trying to figure out how to best serve absolutely everybody that we can. So if people have questions, we will try and address them as best we can.
This is Ann from the phone.
Hi, Ann. Go ahead.
Hi. Yes, I know that with the Conservation Commission, we do not have any right to have anyone on our commission other than residents of the town of Putney. the planning commission, I believe, is different. They can bring in people from outside, a certain number. And I'm wondering, as you consider things, are people from outside of the Putney area who might have some expertise or experience in being a person of color in the world going to be eligible to come on this committee? Is there going to be any outreach that would allow a more varied group?
I know that I'm not 100% sure. I foolishly should have the resolution in front of me, but I don't. It's on.
It said 2/3 of the, we may
Exactly.
change the resolution because we may want to change the number of people on it, but the original resolution said 2/3 of the people on the committee have to be from Putney. We have lots of people in Putney who will be great on this, and I mean, but yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. My other question is that there seems to have been a lot of good work done with the committee that was there, and things have gotten done in terms of the training and so on. I'm sort of out of this loop altogether, but I assume that some of those folks would be invited back.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we will certainly, there are still two, because of how this worked is that the majority of the members of the committee were appointed in, I believe it was November of 2019. So there,
Josh?
yes.
Can I just say, I think it's important to answer questions, but to also say we don't know. We don't know how this is going to work, because the whole point of this is for us to figure out what would be the best way to move forward, because we don't know right now what the best way to move forward is.
Yeah, no, what I want to clarify is just that the original appointments expired in November of 2020. There are two exceptions to that. One is Swift Everty, who was appointed, I'm gonna say roughly a month or 6 weeks ago, and then also, sorry, what?
Josh, she was appointed on October 21st, 2020. The
Swift
committee
what?
was created on October 23rd, 2019. And the resolution was signed in September. And then Laura Chapman was appointed on July 1st, 2020.
Okay.
But everyone else was the original committee.
So what that means is that there are two members whose terms have not run out. But to Bara's point, we are going to look at how best to go forward with this, and open it up to people who are interested to submit letters of interest when we are looking to populate the committee with interested people.
Gail Haynes has a question.
Gail, go ahead.
Let me unmute you, Gail. Hold on. Or can you unmute yourself? There you
Okay.
are.
Yeah, I just, I'm very saddened to hear about this next move, in terms of that I was so thrilled about the coming together of the town of Putney to decide that this was really important. I do hear in your resolution or whatever statement thing that you're not saying you're giving up on equity and inclusion, but just that it seems like it might have been useful in October to reappoint people. But anyhow, that's in the past.
To what? To what?
To reappoint people. You know, if it's a term is only for a year, then do the work in October, last October, to reappoint them. But anyhow, that's now passed. And I just really want to appreciate, I have not been particularly involved in the committee itself, but I have been the beneficiary of the committee, and the real care about bringing a way for people in our town to come together. I've been part of the book discussion group, and attended several of the sessions that happened in the fall, and just there was an incredible depth of sharing that developed over the course of that time, particularly by the time of the last one in December. And I was also part of the painting of the Black Lives Matter mural. And I think there may be many other ways that need to happen. I do understand that the original goal was just to advise the board, the select board. So I certainly hope more things will be happening in our town that are really for all of us to be able to look at equity and inclusion. What does that mean to welcome each other? What are the kinds of harms that I as a white person don't know that I'm doing all the time because I'm white and I live in a majority white world, and that's how I grew up. And that I think this is really important, and that to go against the divisions, and I would agree that it doesn't make sense to me to call anybody out for doing perceived racist things, because I would suggest that probably all of us do racist things at times, but how do we call each other in to create a whole community? Thank you.
So Jamie has a question in the chat.
Sorry, I'm trying to, let's see, find.
Eric, do you see it?
What?
So Jamie has a comment in the chat if you would like to read it.
You want me to read it, Josh?
Sure, I'm having trouble accessing the chat.
She says, I am curious if the incidents that have been reported as having been done by the equity committee members can be discussed. As the co-chair, I am unfamiliar with incidents like this. I don't think this is a place for that.
Yeah, I don't know whether, I'm aware that both Mary Gannon and Dottie Morris are with us, who have been involved in the social bias training. And they were not asked or necessarily prepared to speak tonight, but wanted to attend. And I don't know whether there is an opinion from either of them about that question.
Hi, Josh. This is Mary. If folks can hear me, I'm not sure that this is a place for me to be giving any input or responding to any questions at this point. So happy to be here and witness this conversation and support in other ways, but that's not something that I can respond to.
Okay, that sounds fair. Sorry to put you on the spot unnecessarily. There's a question from Michelle. What qualifications does the select board have as far as getting to decide who gets appointed to the equity committee? And what will the select board be looking for as far as people that they will decide to accept on the committee? The qualifications that we have are that we are the elected officials who are the select board. Does that give us additional qualification? No, but we're tasked with that by the fact that we're elected to this position. As far as people who they will as far as who the select board will be looking for as they will decide to accept on a committee, I think that will rest with the current select board at the time. But you know, people who are interested in doing this kind of work, that are committed, that can offer some realm. I mean, board work often.
Josh, I just want to interrupt because we don't know what this is going to look like. We need to get guidance. So I think trying to answer these questions right now, we don't know.
Well, and that's sort of what I was getting, sort of what I was getting at is that when we have a better sense of where we think and what the charge will be, then we will be better able to think about who will be best suited to follow up on that charge. And I had written down a few things that I thought, and this is just me speaking, not as the select board, but obviously as a select board member, and things that I considered as sort of possible charges that a select board might want to choose to task a committee with of this type would be, for example, to explore the impact of systemic racism on local town governance and how best to eliminate that impact. Another one possibly, and again, just me talking, to survey the residents of Putney to educate ourselves on how to best serve all the residents with regards to issues of equity and inclusion. And then another possibility is something along the lines of to explore sources of funding to increase the town's ability to do equity and inclusion work without increasing the tax burden on Putney's residents. So that was me thinking about things that if I were wanting to come up with charges, those are the type of things I would be considering for charges to a committee like this. So,
and I guess I just want to speak to what Gail was saying about, you know, that she really appreciated the book group and the work that has been done. That work does not have to be done through the select board. It can be done as a group. I mean, there are many groups that exist completely separate from town government. And so, you know, there can be a group that does that. And I think it would be great.
I have a question, and it's unclear to me how to, if I should be speaking or putting it in the chat or whatever.
who's this?
This is Peg Alden.
Hi, Peg. Since you could put it in the chat, but since you spoke up, you can go ahead and ask a question if you want.
Okay, my question really is what the rationale from the select board is for not working with the existing equity committee to resolve the problems that might exist here. It's really, it seems very odd to me that you wouldn't be working together with the committee to resolve the problems as opposed to disbanding the committee.
Well, I would not characterize what we're doing as disbanding the committee. I would characterize it as most of the appointments have run out. We did not, and it was not intentional. To Gail's point earlier that we should have reappointed them in October, that may be true, or that I guess probably is true, or might be true, I don't know. But it's been an incredibly complicated year, and just staying ahead of town business has been hard, much less juggling all the other things involved. There was nothing intentional about not reappointing these committee members. This is something that over the last couple months became clear that that had occurred and that it's something we need to catch up with. So we are not wanting to work with those people, Peg, and we have been working with them with the assistance of Dottie and Mary in the context of social justice work. But we're trying to figure out how to go back to what the original intent was and how to carry that out. Barra, I saw you raise your hand. I don't know whether you want to add something.
I just, there's some activity in the chat, so I wanted to just bring that out. Dottie tried to say something, and I guess, I don't know if she was muted, but she wrote something in the chat, and so I've been asked to read that so that people can, or direct people to it. So I think Dottie is responding to Jamie's question. Her chat, and Karen, maybe you can make sure that Dottie is unmuted. Her chat statement is, "This is not for me to say, since members of the select board heard these accounts. It is not part of anything we can speak to."
Dottie?
I mean, it may just be, you know, Dottie's statement in the chat is that it's not something that they can speak to. So I think that's the answer to my inquiry as to whether either of Mary or Dottie would want to. And I apologize if it was incorrect for me to invite them to. I mean, they of course could speak if they chose to, but they shouldn't feel they need to in this context. So.
And I guess I do want to just respond to what Peg's question was. We are going to work, or I'm not even going to be on the select board. The select board is going to work with the committee at some point. What needs to happen first is to figure out what's the committee meant to do, because people thought that was clear originally, and it hasn't been, or like things have just happened differently because people, we've been in this really emotional time. We've been in a way that we haven't been able to communicate in person. There's a lot going on. So my understanding of the intention is to become clear about what can a committee like this actually do responsibly and effectively, and then communicate that charge to a committee that they can then go forth with it. And we don't know what that charge is going to be yet, because we don't know even what's possible, what's realistic.
And I think that answer, when we appointed members to this committee, there was a discussion, and people can go back to review all the meetings are on tape and cataloged in BCTV. And if anybody wants to go back, we can help you find those times and dates if you want to. But in the original discussions about this, there was a pretty clear discussion that one of the things this committee was going to do early on was to think about its role for the town and what that might look like, and whether in fact, we even had a conversation of whether it in fact made sense for it to be a town committee, or whether it might be better suited to be a civic committee or a civic group committee, or an ad hoc committee. Then the world got very complicated over the last year, and some of that was lost in that. So there has been a significant lack of communication between the select board and the committee, and I take my chunk of the responsibility for that. I think we all hold pieces of that, but none of us ever, it's sort of neither the fault of the select board or the committee or anybody's fault per se that didn't happen. It just is the way it panned out over the last year. And now we're trying to play catch up with that and figure out exactly what this committee was intended to be doing from the start, and how to best achieve that. Because that was never established clearly at the beginning, and that was a mistake on all of our part. I think that we didn't know what we were trying to do, and now I certainly feel like I have a better grasp on what I think might be useful to the municipality, but it's very hard to separate the work of a municipality from the work of passionate citizens who want to achieve good work, which I think we all are, but we, the select board, are tasked with a role of having the municipality be a really high priority for us, and how best to function in that setting is really challenging. And we are definitely aware that our system, and as I said when I mentioned one of the charges that I would think of, I am very aware that our system includes or has been formed under the circumstances of systemic racism, and how to really explore that and look at it for a select board is challenging, but it's also something that's really important, and we need to figure out how to do that effectively. So sort of going back to some of the original ideas of educating ourselves as to how to be most valuable. Barra.
I just want to read a sentence that the town's lawyer wrote in an email on September 11th, 2019, in relation to the formation of this committee. He said, if the select board officially creates this committee and interview and appoint members to the committee, then the select board will have taken on legal responsibility for the workings of that committee. So I, as a temporary select board person, don't feel comfortable taking on legal responsibility if there isn't a clear charge. So that's partly where I'm coming from, that I feel like it's really important for us to be clear and responsible. And that doesn't mean people can't do civic group things in the town. We're not trying to prevent that. We're trying to say what makes sense for a town appointed committee.
Right. And I think that some part of the discussion we have had is also to answer some of these questions from a town perspective, and then see how the town, with some of that information, see what is the best role for a town to play in. I mean, again, I hope it's clear that we all really want to accomplish the work that needs to be done. And I am very aware that this is not something that's going to get solved anytime soon. Maybe not in the next decades, centuries, I don't know. This is going to be an ongoing process for all of us long beyond the time that we are sitting here. And I think that, the initial part is to figure out sort of the mechanics of it at a town level in the moment, and then figure out how we as a town and as the population of a town can move forward. And that, that's a much bigger conversation, but just getting some of the mechanics of it established first. Barra.
So just another thought about what might come out of this committee in the soon is something like what I have asked before I was on the select board, and the issue of social bias training came up, and I asked, can that be made available to the public? So I think, we would want to give the charge, something like what they did in Keene, is to develop recommendations to prevent or correct systemic and cultural inequities. So if we give that charge, then this committee might come up with, well, let's have Mary and Dottie have a virtual social bias training that the whole town can attend. And I'm not committing them to that or saying that, but that kind of thing. The book group was really, it sounds like it was really good. It sounds like it was really effective and people got a lot out of it. So that's great. And maybe the people who were on the original committee can, if they want to, continue doing that as a private group. So I don't know. I hope that is clear and helpful.
I want to make sure we're getting people who have questions involved. And I apologize for the complications of this digital platform. I am only able to see about 6 people on my screen and the chat. I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat right at this moment. But
I have something to say.
I gather Mark is trying to get in.
Yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Mark. Is that Mark?
Just hearing out everyone and listening to everybody and hearing some frustration and some confusion and just us not being able to connect on the same page. And I think that's something that we want to get to, and that's something that we want to do. I believe that right now, with the equity group, we want to be able to move forward. I don't think we should pause this. I don't think that's something that we need to do. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but I think the only way that work is able to be done is if we have more conversations and understanding what you all need, what the board will need from us to do so that we can move forward. Now, I am, in talks with the group, and some of us are here today. And I know with working at Landmark as the coordinator of diversity and inclusion, students are very happy that something like this exists in Putney, Vermont. And I don't think that it's fair to them for us to just pause this and take this away, because they're doing all this work here to speak on race and gender, and they're able to come together and connect and move forward. So we should be able to do the same. And with that being said, I put talking with the group, I put myself in a position where I don't mind taking that position and connecting and understanding how we can move forward. I think we're so stuck into the talking about race, but there's so many other things that we want to be able to move forward on speaking about with this group. And that's not only speaking for people of color, but speaking for women that's in the community, speaking for the LGBTQ community, speaking for people that are different. That's the whole point of this group. I think what I would really want to get to is, how do we move forward together? How do we move forward by understanding one another and understanding what is it that the board needs us to do? What is it that you want so that we can continue to move forward? I am open to talking and connecting to who I need to do that with, my team as well. And the only way that we can make a difference is by coming together. And once we do that, then we can get out of this confusion and this disconnect, because I don't think that's not what we want here. We want to be able to move forward. So how do we do that? So I'm open to connecting and talking to whoever, and so is my team. We're here. I don't want this to stop. I live in Putney. I work in Putney. I go to the general store. I eat at the diner. I'm African American, and I can talk and connect with anyone, no matter the gender or race. So if I can do that, I'm sure we all can too. So that's my spiel here. I know we had some letters coming in basically saying those that want to still be a part of this and be a part of the equity committee, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mark.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
The most important thing that you said when you introduced this topic was that the committee is advisory, like all committees appointed by select boards. So my contribution is to suggest that as you reorganize the committee, you rename it the Equity and Inclusion Advisory Committee, so that it's clear to everyone what its function is.
Good idea.
Thank you.
This is Ann. Could I just have one last comment?
Yeah, go ahead, Ann.
I really liked what Mark said. It seems to me you should continue the committee, work on a charge. There may be some people whose terms have expired, and maybe outreach could be done to, get some people. I would hope more people of color on board, or other people who are different, as Mark said, or women, or both, and proceed ahead without disbanding the whole thing. It seems there's flexibility for doing that here. That's my last comment, I think.
None of us ever used the term disband, so I think that that's not our intention. Our intention is to figure out what we need from it and how to best work with a committee, presumably including a number of the people that are involved, or possibly if they're interested and it makes sense, and presumably including some others. But I agree with Mark also. I mean, we want to keep doing this work and how to get there. But I think it may also, based on what I'm aware of some of the nature of the work of this committee, there might be a need for more than just a town committee, equity and inclusion advisory committee. There may be need for a civic group in addition, or other, we need to figure out how to grow, how to do this in the town, but that doesn't necessarily all fall under the purview of the select board. So we have to all, I completely agree. We all have to work together on how to figure out how to take this forward. Because if we can't be equitable and inclusive with each other, then how can we do it on a larger scale? Ongoing conversations. I mean, we just need to keep the conversation going. So, and we're not asking anybody, we're not trying to silence anybody. We're just trying to understand the interface between municipal work and an advisory committee and the implications of an advisory committee. So.
Well, I wish you luck going forward. I'm going to stick with conservation.
This is Gail.
Hi, Gail. Yeah, go ahead.
I definitely appreciated what Mark just said and the sense of keeping going, and yes, definitely some way of having the select board and the equity and inclusion committee, to connect more frequently, perhaps in some way of what's going on and what's important. But I also heard somehow a concern about the select board is responsible for this group, and I don't know that much about the Conservation Commission, but in that same kind of way, it's about, I'm sure there are some ways that the people on the Conservation Commission might say, this is really important for conservation in the town of Putney. And there might be other people in Putney who are like, oh, whoa, we've never done it that way. Just that kind of thing, so that to not hang back because it hasn't all gone smoothly, but to really engage with how to be inclusive of everyone and hear everyone, but that make sure this is important work and that it's going to be challenging. So.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be challenging, and it certainly pushes many of us to stretch ourselves in conversations that we're open to and willing to have. It's hard. There's nothing simple about this, but it has to happen, and it has to happen now and in an ongoing sense, because it's been too long in the making, and that falls upon all of us to keep those conversations moving forward.
Eric, there's like 3 comments in the chat.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see.
Start with Jamie Cantois.
Okay, great idea, Bara, on the public training. Community members have shared that with the equity committee, and we're currently working on a public training. Sheila Garrett, I think also that it would be really helpful to set up regular feedback sessions or a site where anybody can bring concerns and questions, not necessarily just committee members. Laura Chapman, in this conversation, can we all take a moment to honor that it is Black History Month? I would also like to take a moment to thank Dottie, Mary, and the entire committee for the work they have done towards equity within our community, and to the Select Board for working with us through some very difficult times. I am committed to and look forward to continuing the work, whatever form it takes. Sheila Garrett says, I really appreciate hearing the commitment of the Select Board, and I think it is critical that the commitment be really clear and really public.
Yeah, yes to all of the above, and particularly thank you, Laura, for highlighting Black History Month and thanking Dottie and Mary. That has been very useful work for us, and in fact has helped us in knowing the importance of having the conversations we're having right now. And I also completely agree with Sheila that having really clear and really public discussions about this is important. And part of the reason we sort of ended up where we are is because we weren't doing that as regularly as we needed to, and some things built up that that none of us would like to have built up, and then it makes it complicated to continue having those discussions in a public and open manner. So I definitely am very committed to staying as transparent about all of this as we possibly can, and we're all working together. I'm not seeing more in the chat. I want to once again say I really want to open the speaker to anybody who the microphone to anybody who wants to say something. So again, I can't see you all. I apologize, but if anybody wants to voice something, please go ahead.
This is Swift. Thank you to everything that's been said. This is important. I'm so glad we're showing up for this, and I appreciate all the voices that have been in the room. My question, I guess, is what do you want? I'm on the Equity Inclusion Committee, for those of you that don't know. And what do you want us to do with the actions that we have planned right now? We have a meeting that's scheduled on the 8th. We've got people invited to it. We have a bunch of follow-up we were doing from the trainings. What would be your directives on what to do with the things that were in action? If it's stop them, pause them, stop them, because we might not, none of us might be on the committee anymore. So I'm wanting some clear directions on what do we do this week, next week, with those actions that we've had in place.
I think it would be great if you guys wanted to do that as a group that is not a town committee group. I mean, there's no reason for you to not do that.
Okay. I think the important thing to keep in mind is that well, I think Bara's right. You can keep doing that just as a group of people doing it. I think that from the standpoint of the Equity and Inclusion Committee, as you know, Swift, it's just yourself and Laura that are current appointees. So you can't really, in that capacity, you can't have a quorum, and therefore you can't take sort of official committee actions. But I think I would agree with Barra that if this group wants to sort of keep the conversation moving, and then we will figure out how to reincorporate that that work that you continue doing as we move forward ourselves.
If that's appropriate.
If that's appropriate, yeah.
There's someone
One of
in the
these,
chat.
I'm sorry, I just stuck in it a little bit. One of the things is specifically that was referred a town concern, a townsperson, losing the word language here, but a public concern voiced to the select board and then referred to us, and we set up a meeting specifically for this individual's concern around the follow-up
Josh
of
has talked to Jerry Hyam.
Okay. I just how
Sorry,
that meeting feels like that's a meeting that's.
I was
Go ahead, Josh.
up in the, I was focused on the chat for a sec. Sorry, I really missed what you said.
I was just saying I was just saying this piece around specific public concerns that came to the Equity Inclusion Committee through the Select Board. That's what our next meeting is about. And that feels like it really does involve the Select Board because it started as a connection point for public to you and then put to us. And I still want that public concern to be addressed in a timely manner. And a bunch of us can get together and talk to the sheriff and have the guests that have been invited come to that meeting, but it doesn't feel like it holds the same energy of the connection to you, which is where the public voice their concern. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, it totally makes sense. Josh has reached out directly to that resident. And Josh, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, this is in reference, again, sorry, I was a little distracted for a minute, but in reference to defacing of the Black Lives Matter mural, sort of frustrating set of circumstances where, and I had intended to catch up with Sheriff Anderson today, but I didn't have the opportunity to, but I spoke to Captain Samataro on Monday, and his understanding, and I am going to get a public records request so that we can have documentation of this, but his understanding of it was that the Sheriff's Department had gotten to a point where in order to investigate further, they would have need the state's attorney to give them some documentation in order to do that. And that the state's attorney's response was that there was not a crime committed and therefore they weren't able to do that. I think we all realize, and certainly I think Captain Samataro in my conversation with him also recognized whether there was a crime committed or not, there was harm done. There are certain things the town could do if we are going to continue to have a Black Lives Matter mural, and that's going to be an ongoing discussion as well, because the commitment originally was through December. But if we're going to, then do we want to take steps in order to allow us to have some legal teeth in how to follow up on things like this? Because I certainly never would have assumed that it would be an issue that it wasn't a crime, and I figured these would be enforceable, but it's not, according to the state's attorneys. So we're going to do a public records request on that and find out, and then we will have the information that of what the investigation has involved so far and why it is where it is. And my understanding is that it's still an open investigation, but I don't think it's a particularly active investigation because they have, as far as I can tell, more or less followed up on the leads that they had and didn't get further than that. So, but I also want to say, I certainly, and I think we as a select board absolutely do not believe that the action of anybody who intentionally would have defaced the Black Lives Matter mural is in any way acceptable, and we absolutely condone that behavior. And
Condemn, don't condone. We condemn.
sorry, it's the wrong word. Yeah, sorry, condemn that behavior. Don't
So
condone.
Josh,
Don't condone.
there's a bunch of stuff in the chat. Do you want me to read it?
Sure.
So from Michelle, I see that both candidates for the open select board position are here, would either be willing to speak to their vision for how to continue the work. I personally think that's premature, but maybe you could ask ask them to talk about that when they actually have a forum at the Saturday meeting, but it's up to you, Josh. Another thing is, I think this is Lisa Munoz. Whatever the next step, as a former co-chair and new to Putney, I think a charge of knowing better. I think a charge of know better and do better for the town. Make partners in creating that change. And then again, Lisa Munoz, I do firmly believe the work can continue with or without the committee. I hope that it will be part of government work. Mike is asking, Barrett, can you go over the timeline again? Once a new select board is elected, Mike, maybe you can clarify that question in a second. I'm going to just keep going through all of the things that are on here now. Sheila Garrett says, would it be possible to name the group an interim committee, naming the process as ongoing? I think it's critical that the perception not be that the committee is being laid down. And then I think this is Lisa Munoz again. And one of the goals is that DIAJ work is embedded in all of the town work. Marie D, okay, we have to, there's a lot here. So Marie D, agree with the above comment. Is there a charge for the select board and or something in the bylaws that dates the commitment of the select board to EIC work? So there's a lot of questions here. I don't know, and they just keep coming. Like I finish one and then another one pops up. So I'm not really comfortable with just continuing to read all these questions.
Is it possible to call on people that have made comments so they can each speak to?
Yeah, well, I mean, people who want to be, I guess I've invited people to speak up if they want to. Yeah, I don't have I can't follow a chat and follow a conversation at the same time. I just don't have that skill set, and I apologize. But
since I made some comments, I can, mine are just, hi, this is Lisa. And I'm sorry, my camera's not on. I'm at work, so I'm not putting my camera on. Mine were just statements and just saying that I personally believe that the work is, the goal of the work ultimately is that diversity, equity, inclusion, justice is a part of all the town work, right? Like that's the ultimate goal. I do think it matters that it should be continued, sort of municipality government work. And so I just wanted to make those statements.
thank you, Lisa. So Marie.
I would be happy to speak up. This is Peg Alden.
Yeah,
and
go ahead.
The question that I had was whether or not, it's really a proposal that you as the select board extend the committee membership for the folks who are currently on the committee for another 2 months, so that the existing committee can continue to work together and help with the transition to a new charge and a new group. So that's my recommendation.
Thank you for that suggestion. That's, one thing that's complicated about this is the fact that we are going to have that Barra is an intern and not going to be with us after next Tuesday, and a new select board member may have different opinions about any number of things related to this. So,
Well, I think extending for 1 month beyond when a new select board member comes on is not unreasonable. It still leaves a new select board member plenty of room to, create changes. I'm just trying to look for a way to make a transition here that feels respectful of the people who have been engaged and includes the expertise of those people in making changes. Yeah.
Can you specify what expertise you're talking about?
Bara, if you don't agree that the people who are on the committee right now have any expertise in equity and inclusion,
The reason I'm asking is what I'm saying is a lot of the people on the committee are not professionals necessarily. I'm not saying that they don't have a lot of great ideas, but part of what I have found so challenging is that this is a topic that is incredibly emotionally important to people, and we all have different opinions about it and different views. And so I think it's the safest and most respectful thing to do is to speak to people like Mark at Landmark and like Lisa at Putney Putney School. They are experts because they're professionals in this field, and we are talking to them, and we are going to continue talking to them. And that's part of what this process is about.
And they are on the committee, and they have been working closely with a group of people who have something that they've put together as a team. And I think it's and Mark, as Mark has asked, he would like his team to stay together. I think giving them a month or 2 months to work together and to wrap up their work together and transition to something else is just the bare minimum of respect.
So I'm curious if the members of the committee feel like they want to wrap up their work in a month.
I'm asking if they can extend their positions for a month, and you all can work out what. But I'll leave it open. Mark, you can speak up.
Yeah, I definitely, I hear you, Peg, and you're saying, you're speaking, exactly what we want to continue to move forward. That's the whole point here. We're not here to argue or fight here. We just want to be able to move forward, and the team that we have right now are willing to continue to move forward and work with the board. And that's like our whole reason why we're here. And as Peg mentioned, I think more time will be great. And a month is great for us just to connect, regroup, and continue working together. That's our whole point here. We're not here to argue or fight with anybody. We just want to be able to move forward the right way. And the only way that's going to be the right way if we all agree on moving forward together. So you let us know exactly what you need us to do, and we are going to do what we do so that we can connect and move forward together. That's all I can really continue saying.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
The most important point that you mentioned at the outset is now being overlooked as the conversation has moved forward. If I understood you correctly, you said that some members of the Equity, Inclusion Committee took it on themselves to approach citizens to admonish them for their behavior, including their political views. Did I understand correctly?
That was part of the statement that Bara read, that that is our understanding.
Now that, of course, Mr. Chairman, is deeply troubling because no committee appointed by a select board has any powers to do anything on behalf of town government. They are purely advisory. Now, it may be different in other states, but that's the way it is in Vermont. And this is where the committee, where members of the committee crossed the line. Now, whether other members of the committee were aware of it, I don't know. Maybe we can find out. But the committee has to be instructed strictly that all it can do is advise the select board. Of course it can invite people to come to its meetings and talk to them and have discussions, but it can take no action. That is the nature. And if members of the committee did so, and if they were acting on behalf of the committee, that is the problem that we are solving.
This is Sheila. I would like to say a word if I might.
Sure, go ahead, Sheila.
It sounds to me like we are speaking as if that report were verified, and that the behavior has been proven to be out of line. I'm not sure that we really know that, for one thing. And the other thing is, I think that a big part of the problem is that that a lot of us are speaking of perceptions as realities, and that's not only dangerous, but it's a concern to me that people will perceive even what happened in this meeting tonight as critical of the committee for actions that we don't even know happened. And so I think the perceptions are just as, important that they be considered. Thank you.
Hey, Josh, this is Mike Murwicki.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I'm not sure if I remember exactly at the beginning of this, I think Barra sketched out a timeline of what you wanted to help happen after the new select board member is seated. But I also want to share that I think there's a middle way that's being offered here to make this transition, and the idea of interim appointments to get to the next stage seems like a fair compromise to make a transition to continue the work of this. And also there is a public perception that where perceptions can become realities, and it would, I see it as a way to a win-win to help move things along and help you move things along as you want, and have the committee transition to the next stage.
I don't know how the other select board members feel about that. I don't, I guess from my perspective, the single most important aspect, as has been brought up more than once, is advice from legal counsel that no one on the Equity and Inclusion Committee is to do active outreach to town members. Anything beyond a strictly advisory role is not within the purview of the resolution that was approved. So I don't know, Barra or David, whether you want to weigh in on the idea.
Yeah, I have a suggestion following along the idea of what Peg was pointing out, of a month or two, that if we make it keep the committee members who are on now, extend those appointments for a month, and make sure the committee understands the only thing you are charged to do at this point is to advise the select board. And if you want to do that within the next month, that's great, but that's the only thing the resolution charged you with. Because my sense is that people in the committee want to do other things, and I think those other things are very important, and they can be done as a private group. The town committee the founding resolution was that you advise the select board about inequities in the town.
And I think Mr. Fairman has pointed out, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Fairman, that in fact statutorily the committee is limited to doing advisory work. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The reason basically is your powers under Vermont statute are the select board shall have the general supervision of the affairs of the town.
Thank you. So,
in other words, no one else does.
Yeah. David.
Can I ask for, oh, I'm sorry.
I want to just say one thing. This is one of the first things that I dealt with when I came on the select board, and I was totally out of my depth. And I know a little bit more about this subject, but not that much. And I feel like the thing that's come clear to me is that there are two very different things needed here. There is an advisory committee or council or whatever that is needed to the select board, and there is an activist group that needs to do the work of whatever the activist group needs to do. And those two need to be separate entities. And we need to define as a select board what we want that advisory committee to do and give them what their charge is. Part of what happened, I think, in the beginning is we left the committee to decide what they might want to do and what that definition might be. And I think we need time as a select board to figure out what the definition of that is. I don't see any of us saying that we want this work to stop. I don't see any of us expressing that it shouldn't happen. But we have to be careful as representatives of the town, of the municipality, that the committee that is advisory is only advisory. And it's very difficult to monitor the actions of all the people on a committee that isn't clear about being only advisory. So I think that we need some time to figure out exactly what we want to bring. And I think what Mark said makes the perfect sense. We'll keep talking, and we will figure out what we want to bring to that advisory committee and then have the conversation. That's going to take a little time. I don't know how long that's going to take. I don't see that as anything stopping. I see that as the select board doing their job, and something that I will admit I didn't know how to do in the beginning of this, and I've learned a bunch in the last year and a half. I didn't understand the responsibilities. I understand them better. I think Howard pointed them out very clearly. I think we're talking about two different things. And I think it's important that the perception is that this work is important to all the people on the select board, because that is the truth. And the part of the work that we're working on right now is trying to figure out the definition of what that charge would be to the advisory committee. So, and that's going to take a little time. That's my comment.
Laura, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a clarifying question because through discussions around this committee, we have been given different actions. This upcoming meeting with the sheriff was at the select board's direction. So I guess I'm curious, I know that we're advisory and I understand what that means, but I also know that all committees, well, not all, I shouldn't say that, but let's say the Conservation Committee often takes actions. They do things like, help the beavers build a dam. And so, and that is nowhere near as, well, it is complicated, but it doesn't come with all of the interpersonal complicated dynamics that we are dealing with at this moment. But I guess I'm just curious, like in the next month, if we were to extend the roles for another month or two, would we be able to do something like meet with the sheriff still? Or is that something that you would want put on the back burner while you're figuring everything out? And I have one other question after you answer that.
Josh?
I mean, I think that, well, I have a couple different, I don't think that meeting with the sheriff was under as a directive from the select board, but I may be wrong in I may be misrepresenting that or misremembering that. I think that a citizen who came forward with a question was guided towards the Equity and Inclusion Committee, and I think that as a result, perhaps the meeting with the sheriff was arranged, but that may be neither here nor there. I think that, you know, as has been said, you know, a private group can meet with anybody they choose to. Also, a committee could meet with anybody. Well, I don't know about anybody they choose to, if that would fall under the charge, but you know, I think that it's how the actions that result from that, as opposed to the act of doing it, is the question that's complicated in this moment for me. I'm not opposed to this group continuing to meet, and I don't know how my fellow select board members feel about extending those appointments for a month at this point, to sort of bridge that gap until we have a new select board member and we go from there. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where we are in this discussion. You know, I mean, I think that I want to pay the committee the respect that's due. I also don't want to discover in a month that some of the things that we have been advised that this committee cannot do may have been done again. So I guess how to.
I'm sorry, I just want to interrupt you because you're saying done again, and this keeps coming up, and there is no actual evidence that anything that you've implied in this conversation has happened that we know of. And I think it's really important, you know, you're talking about what people's actions and their reputations, and I think it's really important for us to be careful in how we frame that.
I absolutely agree with you. I think it's incredibly complicated, and I think it is that exact thing. Yes.
This is Vera.
Yeah.
I had a personal conversation with somebody who admitted to me that she was calling people who was saying things that were racist, and so I have proof of that.
So
again, that's anecdotal. And
what do you want me to have? You want me to have like a written statement? This is a first person account. Of somebody who admitted it.
With somebody on the committee, Laura. So,
okay. All right. I don't want to get into an argument over that. I really don't. But I really worry when we start having conversations like this and it's so like nebulous. It's not, you could be talking about me right now. You could be talking about anybody on this committee.
I'm trying to be respectful of people's privacy and not calling somebody out in a public forum, Laura. So I'm trying to meet what you're saying, that there is no evidence. I'm trying to say there is evidence, but I'm trying to also preserve people's privacy. I feel like you're putting me into a position that's really impossible to satisfy you.
And that is a firsthand accounting, Laura, that happened between an Equity and an Inclusion Committee member and a Select Board member. So I would have to back up Bara on this one, that it would be hard to get closer to clarity on that than that is. You know, I don't want to argue either. I think this is part of the nature why it has required us to spend time in executive session, et cetera, because not only are there issues that are personally complicated for people that we don't necessarily want to talk in public, but there are legal implications of that as well. And so for us as a select board, how to have these conversations without revealing either privileged client attorney conversations and or you know, confidential discussions between members that occurred in a private space, that puts us in a complicated position. And we can't, in good faith, bring those things out in a public format and state them without putting ourselves at more legal jeopardy. So I'm not sure what you're asking of us, but that's about as clear as we can probably be.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
I may be able to help to clarify this. Of course, a member of any committee, as a member of a select board, also is a private citizen. Do we know whether the person who approached the citizen identified himself or herself as a member of the Town of Putney Equity and Inclusion Committee?
That's a complicated question, Mr. Fairman, and I don't have a clear answer. Eric,
The conversation I had with the town lawyer was that if a person is on a committee and they contact an individual citizen, the perception may be if that committee member is speaking of issues that come under the scope of the committee, whether they identify themselves as or not as speaking as the committee, the perception may be that they are speaking for the committee. So the lawyer was saying, if you are speaking about something that comes under the scope of the committee you're on, that needs to not happen. That kind of contact needs to not happen.
Okay, I'm really sorry that I engaged in this line of conversation. I guess I was trying to get to a point where we don't really know as a committee what exactly happened, and I would hope that we could go forward in good faith, that now that there is a clear understanding that these kind of alleged conversations can't take place, that we can go forward in this work with a clear understanding that these conversations won't take place.
Yeah, I guess one more clear clarification about that as far as the legal discussion is concerned is that now that this has been clearly established, any member of the committee that were to undertake any activity of that type going forward would be subject to immediate removal from the committee. So that has to be perfectly clear. A, this cannot happen, and B, if it does happen, any committee member that is responsible is going to be not on this committee at all. And those are both legal requirements or legal recommendations to us from council. And I just want to, for the public listening to this, I just want to sort of highlight for you the nature of the exact conversation we're having right here, right now, highlights the complexity of how to sift through this stuff. Having conversations with people saying one thing and then getting legal advice related to it, and then somebody else saying, but that didn't happen, and so on and so forth. It puts us, we don't want to be and should not be judges or jurors. That is not our job, and we don't want to be doing that. And circumstances such as this put us in a position where we are forced to be in somewhat a quasi-judicial board, at which by statute we are, but that's not a role that we enjoy or care to take on unless it's absolutely forced upon us, which is where we are right now. So that having been said, the idea of extending, I'm getting feedback from somewhere. If people could mute themselves, the idea of extending appointments, I guess I'm willing to consider it, but it's a pretty loaded question for us because we've spent a lot of time and energy and honestly taxpayer money trying to figure this out. And And I wish we didn't have to do that. So I hope people understand that.
So
Mr.
for me,
Chairman,
I just make a quick comment, and that is why it's so important for us to rework the charge, because this makes this point so clearly that we can't monitor this. It has to be just an advisory board, and we weren't clear about that. And the part where if we maybe came up short was not being really clear about that, and we need time to do that. These are two separate ideas, advisory and activists.
I'm just again, I believe that everyone that is on the committee is here, and I don't know if it's helpful for you if in considering extending our I don't know what extending the appointments for a month or two, if getting us all on screen waving like we got it, no community outreach, like all 6 of us are here, we can all put our cameras on and be like, yeah, we commit to that, we hear you. I think we're all here. Anne's here. People are popping on. Laura is here. I don't know if that's helpful. We do hear. I hear you very.
I think that's a great idea. I think if we could, I mean, I don't know if we want to, if Josh and David, if you feel comfortable with this, but if we were to say we're going to, essentially, because we're not extending it, we're actually reappointing because the appointments have run out. So we would be reappointing certain members for a month, and maybe why don't we say a month, and then with the possibility of extending it to 2, like another month, if you feel like you need to do the work, for you to, you know, like Mark was saying, wrap up sort of what you have in the works, and then we figure out what the charge is, and maybe by the time the month is up, the charge will actually be clear, and as long as it's really clear to everybody on the committee that this is, you know, essentially you're gathering information to then advise the select board about what steps would be helpful.
And I guess I would say, I'm not sure I need each and every person to some sort of come forward and say that. But if everybody is on this phone call, if there's anybody who does not understand that, or it's not clear to them whether that applies to them, if they care to ask a question or comment, that's fine. Otherwise, I think we can all assume, based on what we've heard, that the messaging has been abundantly clear.
So sorry, the only person that's not here is John. John is not.
I think it would be helpful because this is being recorded. I think it would be helpful for people to say, yeah, we get it. And then if there's ever any question later, we can say, okay, we had this conversation. Everybody got it. I just feel like, you know, legally that's clear.
That's fair to me.
Yeah.
I think it's a good suggestion, Swift.
Okay.
The only issue is John's not here, and I don't know if John submitted the letter today or not.
We can, I can have that conversation with him separately, or we can ask him to verify that. I think he's pretty clear on this already.
And I guess I just have a question about, so there's the meeting that was scheduled with the sheriff, and that I think could be considered gathering information for sure, because you're not actually like taking action. I guess I'm wondering what is it that the committee is specifically working on that you're wanting to wrap up in the next month or two before you get before we figure out a really clear charge for a reorganized committee.
I don't know if I'm the one to answer that, but my mic is on. Go ahead, Josh, if you want to.
I guess I would say, well, yeah, I don't know. Swift, go ahead if you have an answer to that.
I mean, I think I have some of the things that we've been working on recently that do seem like they would be ongoing and would be helpful for whatever is happening with equity and inclusion in this town, which is some of the ideas and curiosities of what moving forward looks like, and so what are the goals, and maybe that's information that's gathered that's put forward with whomever is on the committee that continues, or to a new committee of here are the spots that and it's the same conversations we've been having the past few months of what are our goals, what do we want to do 2021, and so a lot of the work that was done in the trainings. That's the other piece of that. By just receiving this trainings, the Equity Inclusion Committee has a lot more resource, and people that are at those trainings have a lot of the word that comes like juice, like they got just juiced up in this piece of like, I want to keep that resource flowing.
So it looks like Laura's mic isn't working, so I want to read. She wrote something in the chat. My mic is not working and I'm already appointed, but I am happy to commit to this and grateful to the board for taking this action. And I think she's responding to the question of what are you wanting to wrap up? She says, meeting with the sheriff, finishing up our goal setting that we were working on in the trainings and supporting the select board and going forward.
That all sounds, yeah. What I was going to comment was, I think that as we have heard from a number of people, and as we would hope to do anyway, is for there to be some communication with the select board as to sort of what the thinking of the current Equity and Inclusion Committee, what their ideas might be as to how things could move forward. And that might help us to come up with a clear charge. So, rather than thinking of it as sort of wrapping up the committee, more thinking of it as how do we look at this work? How do we look at extending this work forward, regardless of what the committee looks like?
So I guess I'm going to ask.
Oh, Jamie. Sorry. Jamie just put one thing in the. They had voted to go ahead with the spring book group and are creating the flyer. I'm in favor of a book group. I think that given where we are as far as a select board charge is concerned, I would ask Jamie that maybe that is undertaken as a, of course,
private group.
Equity and inclusion related, but it's not as an outreach from the Equity and Inclusion Committee. And so I have attended some of the book group meetings and I think it's great and I hope it continues, but I'm not sure it should fall under the purview of this because as we have discussed, the select board's ability to oversee that in any way, which we are tasked with as a statutory responsibility, is complicated. So
it's also not advisory. It doesn't fall within the actual resolution for the current committee. So I think it's great, and it would be great if the people who are doing it want it. I mean, essentially, it's just like putting it under another heading, putting it under a heading of a town. A citizen group rather than the Equity and Inclusion Committee. And like honestly, those kind of things are needed. To not be, it doesn't have to be just people related to the town that do this. It would be great for private citizens to do these things.
So yes, so my response, Jamie, is I hope you will continue the book group, but I don't think it should be considered to be officially sanctioned by the select board and or the Equity and Inclusion Committee.
So I guess it feels like where we're at is to see if the select board, the three of us, can agree that we ask we reappoint the members who are currently active on the committee for another month with the possibility of extending it another month if we need to, and asking everybody to go on camera and just acknowledge that they hear that the resolution that allows this committee to exist says that it's meant to be advisory.
I'm okay with continuing it in that capacity.
David, do you want to chime in or abstain or?
I'm going to abstain right now because I have a lot more to think about what the charge should be, and perception is important too. How will the lines cross between a private activist committee and the select board sanctioned advisory Equity and Inclusion Committee? And I need to think about that some more, so I'm going to abstain from that.
So are the people on the committee willing? I see some of them visually, but I don't see all of them visually. Are you willing to? Oh, Ann Beekman saying she can't use camera or mic. I agree to the board terms. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think that I guess what for the record, if we could just have each of those 6 members say verbally, this is so and so, and I agree that
our work will be advisory only.
Only, yeah. So people, I know we got verification of that from Laura in the chat. I think we just heard Annie say it. Swift, you?
Yeah, committed in on board.
Jamie?
I had a clarifying question based off of Vera's conversation with the lawyer, because after January 6th, I started connecting with my carpenter and other folks that I'm friends with to see if we could write a joint statement that was people of different ideological and political perspectives. And so as a private citizen, I've been calling folks and asking if we can collaborate on this project. And so I'm confused about, if I say yes to this, are you saying that I can't do that project anymore?
I would say that if it has to do with anything that could be considered equity and inclusion material, that it would be best for you to choose whether you're going to do that as a private citizen or be on an advisory committee to the select board for the next month, which means not taking part in those actions. And you can choose either one.
And Jamie, that having been said, you know, you're a citizen as well as a potential member. You can attend all the meetings regardless of your status. So if you were to choose to not commit to this so that you can continue that project, then you can still attend the meetings. You just wouldn't be a member.
And so that's okay. So, I mean, I can put that pause as a private citizen. I can put that project on pause as a private citizen because this work is really important to me and this committee is really important to me. So if you need to hear, yeah, if I understand that the role of this work is advisory, and yeah.
Great.
Okay. So I think Lisa and Mark, perhaps.
This is Lisa. I understand that the role is advisory. I just want to comment that the having to pledge the advisory feels off to me, and it feels off. I think because it feels like punishment for a crime that I'm not sure was committed or I committed. I'm just naming what I feel and saying, like, on the record. I don't have a problem being on the record. I have a law degree. Like, I just feel like there's a lot of information that's not clear, and as a select board, as all rights, is privy to a host of conversations. And so if I can say, I understand fully that it's advisory, I say it with reservation and not feeling great.
Okay. Duly noted. Yeah, I certainly, and this is only me saying it, so I'm not sure that helps, but I certainly don't think of this as punitive. I think but I can imagine how it would feel that way, and I'm sorry for that. But I think that it is more an assurance from a legal perspective for us that we are agreeing to something that isn't going to get us into more legal problems. So that's where I'm coming from.
And I guess I would ask on that point that, and this is my legal background, like I would like to read that from the attorney themselves or whatever that you can share about the advisory and your role as a private citizen for my own education, not necessarily for this moment, but I think that's important information for people who consider to be on a committee, know that. And while we're taking, at your word, I just think it's important to have that information so that I could read through it.
Sounds fair.
We have a letter from the lawyer that I could probably email it too.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
I can assist with clarifying this by explaining how fundamental this really is, that committees are advisory. Constitution of the State of Vermont, Chapter 1, Article 6, that all power being originally inherent in and consequently derived from the people, therefore all officers of government, whether legislative or executive, are their trustees and servants, and at all times in a legal way accountable to them. That's the end of the quotation. Now, the Supreme Court of Vermont has held that accountable to them means via election. Committees are not elected, therefore they are not accountable to the people. Therefore, they cannot have any governmental function beyond advising government, in this case, the select board of a town. It's as fundamental as that. It's the Constitution of the State of Vermont. You have to be elected in order to govern.
I don't have a problem with that. I'm saying more about the separation between private citizen and a role on a committee, not the nature that this committee is advisory.
Yeah.
Also,
happy to provide you with that information, Lisa. I will just confirm with counsel that he's comfortable with us sharing that, and then we'll forward it to you. Does that sound fair?
Also, Lisa, I just want to point out that Swift was the one who suggested that you guys all check in. So I was assuming that that was sort of going to be fine for you. I don't mean to put you in a position where, to make you feel guilty or
I mean, this is a conversation. Whether Swift said it or was mentioned by the board, I'm just noting my reaction to it. It wasn't, it's not personal against Swift. It's not personal against the board. It's like, it feels legal and not, and it feels like not having all the details.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to just comment. I'm Chrissy Lee. I'm not a member of the Equity Inclusion Committee. I'm a resident of Putney. And I just wanted to echo the discomfort that Lisa shared, requiring all of the committee members to pledge to their understanding of this limitation. I mean, it's heartbreaking to think that feels like punitive to any committee members. It also reads as an admonishment. From my perspective, it feels like a public admonishment of the committee. And when you ask why, or when people talk about the desire for there to be more people of color who serve on this committee and wanting people to just be involved in committee work, I feel like seeing this play out the way it's playing out feels like an active deterrent for people to participate in this work if one of the consequences is being publicly admonished for what I want to believe is well-intentioned actions. And I want to believe that there are other ways that this could have been handled and that this understanding could have been come to with the committee members around these legal particulars in a way that doesn't feel as publicly damning and damaging for the integrity of the committee.
Thank you.
But people have said that, have mentioned that, perceptions, public perceptions matter, and sort of the suggestion of wrongdoing, the suggestion of guilt in this circumstance has far-reaching consequences. And I also question whether this is a level of scrutiny or a level of attention that would have been drawn for another committee where there was maybe someone who's stepping outside of the purview of that role as a committee member.
So I just want to apologize because I was the one who said, well, we might as well get it on record. And I hear what you're saying, that I think Swift meant it just to say, because we can't see each other. I think she meant it as a sort of just like, let's connect with each other by visually seeing each other. And I then wanted it to be like, there's been a lot of communication breakdown and a lot of confusion. And but I'm sorry if it feels like admonishment. That was not my intention. I hear that is how it's being received, and I'm really sorry that that's how it's being received, and I'm sorry for my part in that. I think that this committee is these issues are tearing our country apart. They're really, really important, and there are really heightened emotions around all of this. So all of this is there's an added layer that maybe doesn't exist in on other committees, and I don't know how to do it perfectly. I'm going to make mistakes, and I apologize for not being as skillful as I would like to be. I think I will speak for myself. I'm doing the best I can, and I'm exhausted at this point, so it's hard for me to necessarily do it well.
I just wanted to speak a bit to my choice to do that, because I didn't check in with committee members before I did that, and I think there's a fault in our culture of jumping to urgency. And I think that's where I was coming from, this place of like urgency and wanting to do something to have an action that, so the committee that I'm on that I value didn't get canceled. So I want to honor whatever emotion that was coming from, and anyone that might have been harmed from that, especially my committee members and any community members. So thank you so much for your words. I'm sorry I didn't catch your name, but that was really clear, and I really received that. Thank you.
I wanted to make a comment to that, what you said, Swift, and I think urgency can be great sometimes, and I think it can be a problem sometimes, and that's why I pointed at needing time to rethink the charge, is that to really think it out well. And I had no intention of anybody being admonished, and I think I speak for everybody on the select board. There's no idea of canceling anything. We're just trying to do this better. There's a lot of things to consider. And like Vera said, I've never done anything this hard, ever. And I'm exhausted from this work. And frankly, if I had any idea what this was going to be, I wouldn't have slid yes to being on the select board. I thought being on the select board was running the business of the town. And I thought maybe I could save us some money and be more efficient. I had no idea this was coming down the pike. And I'm totally exhausted by this. I don't want anybody to be there.
This is Sheila Garrett, and I'd like to just make a very brief comment based on our work that we've done through the Quaker meeting. There's a video that we've shown several times amongst us there of some work that was done many, many years ago. And it was work of this nature. And one person of color just said to the white people, "Welcome to the pain."
Yep.
Yeah, no, I had a clear, we had a very, very challenging select board meeting several nights ago. And I came away from that clearly recognizing how my degree of privilege makes me not used to having to fight so hard for something, and regardless of what your perspective is, and you know, I have no idea. I can't even possibly relate to that reality being placed on me all the time. But I think both Barra and David and myself also share this feeling of exhaustion just surrounding this short duration of work that we've been doing this. And for me, it definitely, again, the meeting I came away from the other night was like, wow, I'm so privileged not to have to do this all the time. And it's hard work, very hard work. And we all hope to do better at it. But so I guess I would say, I think we have had a clear enough understanding with the EIC that if we go ahead and renew appointments for several members, that there won't be activist work involved. So Barra, I think David is going to abstain from this, so that probably leaves it up to you and I. I would make a motion that we reappoint Lisa Munoz, Mark Thurman, Jamie Contois, and Ann Beekman, and John Johnson to their roles on the Equity and Inclusion Committee for an additional month from today's date, to be revisited before the end of that month.
I second the motion.
Is there any further discussion around that? All right, if there's no further discussion, it's been moved and seconded to approve the above stated reappointments. All those in favor?
Aye.
And one abstention from David. All right, thank you. And thank you all for participating in this, weighing in on all aspects of it. You know, every bit of it that we do influences how we work on it, and highlights the need to keep doing it. And I think we're all committed to that thoroughly, and it's going to keep being hard. So thank you all, and particularly thank you to the committee members who are absolutely well intended in the work they've done, and hopefully will participate in continuing this work in whatever form it takes going forward. So thank you all. All right. So unless there's anything further on that, I am going to turn to Karen to review her town manager's report.
So Planning Commission, March 16th, they will have a public informational hearing regarding proposed changes to zoning and subdivision regulations. At some point, the select board, I think it's at 30 days after, the select board has to also have a meeting. But I'll keep you in the loop on that. Hickory Ridge Road paving project, Brian and I talked about that this week, and we're going to sit down and put a proposal together to put it out to bid. Brian might do a little bit of work. He might, I don't have all the details right now, but he's thinking it through right now. So I will keep the board posted on that. And they did post the roads today for mud season, so weight limits. So we're getting into that time of the season. And that's all I have for now.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Karen.
Yes, thank you. Is there any other business that anybody would like to bring before us? This is an opportunity. I don't see anything coming up in the chat.
This is Jamie.
Yes, go ahead, Jamie.
I wondered if there's any electronic copy of the town report. I noticed that the Equity Committee statement was attributed to Jamie Contois, Chair, and I didn't know if there was a way to say Jamie, Lisa Munoz and Jamie Contois co-chairs. I know you can't in the printed copy, but I didn't know if there's a way to, I didn't know if we had something posted on the website or anything like that.
It is on the website.
It would probably, Jamie, be inappropriate for us to change anything just because it is, well, I'm guessing it is for all practical purposes a legal document. So an alteration of it on the electronic copy might not be something we should do, but sorry if that was an oversight on our part. I'm not sure how that happened, and certainly Lisa's participation and willingness to co-chair is recognized and appreciated. Any other business? All right. So if there's not any other business, I think sorry, my battery is low. That shouldn't happen. I'm plugged in. I think we do need to have a brief executive session. If somebody would like to make a motion for that.
I'll make a motion to enter executive session under Title I V.S.A. 313(3).
Second the motion.
So it's been moved and seconded to enter executive session under Title I V.S.A. 313, Section 3. And I would like to invite Karen Astley to join us. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. So thank you, everybody. We're going to enter executive session. Our next meeting date is March 10th at 5:30. Although I think we are going to need to have a meeting on March 3rd for the purpose of reorganizing the select board after the election. Karen, you want to?
Yeah. So your next meeting is going to be
Saturday,
February 27th.
Oh, of course.
at 10 a.m.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to tell you, I can't make it. Sorry.
And then you're going to have to reorganize. We'll have to pick a date. The 3rd won't work for me right now.
Okay.
You could do the 4th if you wanted to.
Yeah. Why don't we figure that out after Saturday?
Okay.
So we exited executive session at 9 o'clock, and we will see you at our next meeting, which is Saturday morning at 10 o'clock.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Bye, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Sleep
See ya.
well.